What's up, everybody? This is Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, HawgSports.com. Well, after 2 weeks of transfer portal madness, we finally hit a dead period, so the visitation has stopped, but the recruiting hasn't. Arkansas also just a couple of days away from the early signing period. We're going to talk to Danny West about that, and we're also going to be joined by Andrew Ellis, talk a little bit about the latest in basketball and some other things as well. All that and more on today's episode of Hog Sports Live. Plenty of ways to watch and listen to the show. We are streaming live right now on YouTube, so be sure to subscribe to the page and set it to where you get all the notifications anytime the show is aired. Also available on Facebook Live. Follow that page if you haven't done so already with 90,000 other Razorback fans. Hit the like or subscribe, or the like or the thumbs up on both of those platforms, and give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. The last review that I've seen on Apple Podcast that was published is in October. So reaching 1,000 reviews was not reached this year. That was the goal. So disappointed. But if you haven't left a review, we'd love to have a 5-star review from you. Also available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, anywhere else you can think of to find podcasts. We are there at HawgSports.com. Where do we want to start today? We could just dive right into the transfer portal, but I don't think I've really talked a lot about the schedule yet since it was released. And, just to give an idea of where things stand with that, I don't hate this schedule, especially compared to past years. I think it shapes up pretty nicely. I do think that there are some periods where, if you're Sam Pittman, you really had to think, we better win here. You open with UAPB. I'm not a big fan of opening your home away from home. Not my favorite thing in the world. I think it takes a little bit away from kind of the energy of it. I wish it was flipped around, actually. I wish they played UAB first instead of week 3 in Fayetteville. I wish they played week 1 in Fayetteville and then played UAPB, a couple weeks later. But it is what it is. UAPB, Golden Lions, War Memorial Stadium, August 31st. And then you go to Boone Pickens Stadium in Stillwater to play Oklahoma State in week 2, and then you face UAB in week 3. And then after that, it's Auburn Tigers in Jordan-Hare Stadium. That's 2 tough games pretty early on. Now let's take it a little bit deeper. Let's go before the bye week. So Texas A&M in Arlington, a place that hasn't been friendly to Arkansas. Obviously, they've got some new stuff going on there at Texas A&M, new coaching staff and everything. Then you get Tennessee and Fayetteville. So the first 6 games before your bye, to me, ideal scenario is that you come out of that 4-2. And that might be a lot to ask. That might be asking for a little bit of luck here and there. But that means Tennessee, Texas A&M, Auburn, Oklahoma State. Those 4 games you need to come out 2-2 to avoid a lot of the grumbling. Now, you can be 3-3 and that doesn't mean it's the end of the world, but some people might talk like it is. 4-2, I think you come out of that in a little bit better shape. And you have to, include that Arkansas is coming off of a 4-8 season. It's not like they're coming off a lot of success. So you could see a lot of panicking if things don't go well to start here after the way things went last time. Then you get the bye week. You get LSU at Mississippi State and Ole Miss. So LSU at home, Ole Miss at home, Mississippi State on the road. To me, that's not a bad 3 game. It's tough, but LSU will be without their Heisman Trophy winner. Mississippi State is rebuilding with a new coach, and then Ole Miss in Fayetteville. And to me, if you can come out of that 2-1, that's pretty darn good. You get your 2 tougher opponents, in my opinion, at home, and your easier opponent on the road. So get to 6-3 there, and then you get another bye week. So it's a double bye season. Texas, Louisiana Tech, Missouri need to go 2-1 there. And you get to 8 wins. And I don't think anybody could be terribly upset with 8 wins. Obviously, that's not the hopes for Arkansas fans. You want more than that. But considering where the program has been, if you get to 8 next year, I think you have to feel a little bit encouraged about the direction of things with, Pittman and then Bobby Petrino coming in and things like that. So that, to me, 8 wins is kind of that's why I look at this schedule. I'm like, yeah, this is, if things go right, 8 wins. Things can go wrong too. You start talking about things going wrong in the middle of the schedule, it could be change in leadership type of wrong, So Sam Pittman, I don't think there's any question to anybody out there that he has to win and needs to win quick. Needs to start off that season strong. So that's just kind of my reaction to the schedule. Speaking of other schedules, Arkansas basketball, everybody's down on the basketball team right now. Did I delete it? I think I did. No, there we go. All right, so basketball, obviously coming off a 69-66 win over Lipscomb. Arkansas thought the game was over at the 10-minute mark, and Lipscomb scored 17 unanswered after Arkansas went up 20. They always play kind of weird in North Little Rock, I guess. I'm not reading too terribly much into that, but Arkansas basketball hasn't been what we hoped it would at this point. However, we have, a pretty good pool of evidence to show that Eric Musselman's probably going to get it figured out at some point. And hopefully that's going to happen at the turn of the new year. So you got Abilene Christian on Thursday, December 21st. It's the day after the early signing period for football. Then you get UNC Wilmington on the 30th. All right, then we got a little bit of a break before opening SEC play in Bud Walton Arena against the Auburn Tigers. Ought to be electric at 1 o'clock, even though I guess you won't have a lot of the students there. But should be a great environment. And then your all SEC play from there. Baseball, we're not that far off for some baseball. February 16th, you have a 4-game stretch with James Madison in Fayetteville, the 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th. And then you have college baseball series in Arlington, Oregon State, Oklahoma State, Michigan. So not too far off. That starts, the college baseball series starts February 23rd. So not too terribly far off from baseball, although we've got other things in mind, obviously. All right, I want to get to Danny West here, but before we do that, I want to mention my friends at Ozarks Go. If you are curious about improving your internet service, then take it from me, I couldn't be happier with Ozarks Go. OzarksGo.net/hog if you want to find out if they're in your area, but generally Northwest Arkansas. If you get an Ozark Electric bill, then you're going to get Ozarks Go most likely. Parts of Missouri, parts of Oklahoma, ever expanding. They offer a great deal and not going to jack you up in year 2 with a increased rate. But I always say the one thing that stands out to me is I've never unplugged and replugged my router. I had a guy tell me the other day that his internet service provider tells him every few weeks to unplug and replug his router. I've never even thought about it because I've had 100% uptime. What's better than that? I offer several different tiers of internet service. Go check out our friends at OzarksGo.net/hog. You can call them at 479-684-4900. And when you do that, you're going to talk to somebody local because they're a local company, not going to get shipped off to some call center. I keep removing the wrong thing. All right. I know y'all are waiting for Danny. It's recruiting time. So for those of you who don't follow Danny, what are you doing? How could you not follow Danny? Danny's almost to 50,000 X followers. I'm going to stop saying Twitter X. I'm going to stop saying Twitter. Twitter doesn't exist anymore, so it's X now. And you ask that, like, how long before we just stop saying Twitter/X and we just start saying X? For those of you who don't follow Danny, you can follow him at Danny West 24/7. Help him get to 50,000 follows. Been the HawgSports recruiting analyst for a number of years. Danny, how's our volume today?
You tell me, brother.
I think we're okay. Maybe people in the comments can let us know. We were a little weak last week. So, Danny, obviously this is your favorite time of year. There's just nothing going on for you. You get to kind of sit back and relax. Were you on vacation this past week? Or? Yeah, okay, that's what I figured. Yeah, well, obviously we hit a dead period today, but that's only a brief period before we have the early signing day, of course, and then we just wrapped up 14 straight days of portal madness.
Yep, and it's I don't know how it's going, Trey. They've missed on a few of the last couple of days here, and you could tell it. You get on the message boards, everybody's a little bit on edge because there have been
pissy.
Some misses,
A little pissy.
Yeah. You said it, not me. Nate Matlack, Kansas State defensive end. He chose Pittsburgh over the weekend. We saw Jaquan Bolden, a kid that Arkansas felt really good about. A junior college offensive lineman out of Mississippi Gulf Coast. He went with Purdue over Mississippi State and Arkansas. A little bit of a surprise there. Not a little bit. That was a big surprise. I don't think anybody saw that one coming. But found out over the weekend that evidently he's got a cousin at Purdue, and his position coach, lead recruiter, is from Mississippi. A lot of connections there. So Purdue's a really good education. Good luck to the guy. But Tyler Woodard, earlier today, he's a JUCO defensive back that we've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
He decided to stick with Mississippi State.
Yep.
And Kamari Copeland, another defensive lineman from the JUCO ranks, he is going back home as well. He's a Virginia Beach native. That's kind of the one we've been worried about. Sure enough, Virginia Tech got him on campus last, and really no surprise that he stuck with them. But outside of that, I mean, you picked up a kicker commitment over the weekend. Now you're kind of sitting back and hoping some of those bigger names from last week start to fall your way in the coming weeks here. I think everybody kind of sees Wednesday as the day. Well, that's not necessarily the case for a lot of these transfers. They don't have to decide by Wednesday. So this is going to spill on over into January. And a lot of these guys that we've talked about for, the last couple of weeks, we'll still be talking about here in 2 or 3 weeks. So a lot going on. Signing day starts Wednesday, and at least then you can get most of your, if not all, of your high school and junior college guys signed, as well as, if they've got some transfers that want to go ahead and do it, by all means, I'm sure we'll see that Wednesday too.
Danny, how much of this is maybe Arkansas not putting the same value on players that maybe other schools are? Is that possible, or is it just Arkansas straight up getting beaten for some of these guys? I will say this, I feel like every fan base is disappointed with the amount of NIL money that they have and such, but I think people would actually be surprised to find out how much money Arkansas actually spends on NIL, because the narrative out there is that, Arkansas just doesn't have that much. Right. And from what I hear, that's just not really true. And even last year when, people were talking about how much, there's players on the team getting $500,000, getting almost $1 million. In looking at this team right now, you think Jalen Braxton comes cheap, coming back after the freshman year? Luke you think that's just a cheap expense, or keeping
getting Landon back? Yeah.
Getting Landon Jackson from going to the NFL or entering the transfer portal. These are not cheap these are expensive players to keep around, but I think based on what I know from talking to inside sources and stuff, Arkansas spends very competitively when it comes to NIL, but there's, as I said, after the post-Petrino walk and talk, there's some battles that Arkansas is just not going to fight, and sure. I'm wondering if some of that's coming into play here, because there are still some pretty big fish out there.
A few things come to mind here. First of all, I think it is a mixture of several things at play here. But first of all, I think the 4-8 season has hurt them.
I do too.
And I said so during the season. My biggest concern would be the portal, and I think, not to toot my own horn, I think they've run into some of that. They're just not as sexy as, some of the 10-win Missouri, Ole Miss types right now. And I think Arkansas is in probably a better position NIL-wise than has been let on. But at the same time, I still think they're behind some schools, too, in that regard. So the second thing, is just that. You got a lot of people kind of looking over the fence a little bit, so to speak, at Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin. He's a problem right now, frankly. This is their second time in the last 3 years they've won 10 games, and it was, sandwiched, I guess, with an 8-win season. So they've got momentum, and everybody sees that. And, of course, they're going after these stars, and you see Walter Nolan, some of these types in the mix over there. You lose your linebacker to them. That type of stuff adds up. But then I think you're on to something, too. Thirdly, I would say there have been cases where, a guy from USC or Oklahoma or whatever enters the portal, and immediately fans in Arkansas go, man, that one makes the most sense. He's former 4-star, no-brainer. Go get him. He's got 2-3 years left. And they kind of assume that Arkansas is going full bore after some of these guys, when really I can hit up the guy and he tells me, no, sir, I haven't heard from Arkansas. I doubt that's a lack of knowledge on Arkansas's end. They know who's in the portal. So I have seen that here and there where, fans or media maybe push a name that's really not on the radar at all. So, you bundle all that up, and here we are. But I think there are several different angles, different ways to look at this thing.
Danny, obviously Arkansas got some recent commitments, and people, kind of focus on the negative. But Fernando Carmona was a pretty big get. Danico Slaughter was a nice get also. What do you think about this portal class right now as it stands with, 6 guys?
Yeah, 6 guys so far that have gone public. I think they've got a couple that haven't gone public yet, and those are names that, if they hold, and that's the key now. There's a lot of ifs nowadays, Trey, with all the numbers and NIL and all this stuff going on. Stuff can change in a hurry. I hope people still realize that. But, they're still sitting on a couple that I think will excite fans when they come, because most people like the stars and whatnot. But so far, man, I like the Fernando Carmona guy. I think he's probably the most exciting one, but simply because of the needs on the offensive line. You had to go get a left tackle. That's no shot at anybody currently on campus, but sure makes you feel better to, throw in a little competition there. And he's a guy that I think could probably come in and start at left tackle next year. So that was a big one. You talked about Slaughter there, really experienced SEC caliber guy. We've seen Pittman go after these types. He wants either a big body or a big body of work, and this guy's got both. So, and of course, Taylor Green we talked about last week, and the tight end, a couple of those guys. But to start it off with 2 offensive tackles, Carmona and Blackstock, I think that's a pretty good starting point. We'll see what happens with Addison Nichols, who was in over the weekend. He also visited Georgia Tech as well as Clemson last week. I think that comes down.
The Tennessee transfer, for those who don't know. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I've just kind of run through them there. But,
sure.
Interior lineman that Arkansas thinks can play center for them. They've got to find a center. He's played mostly guard, but has repped quite a bit, practiced quite a bit at center. So, and they've seen that tape and feel good about it. So we'll see what happens with Addison. That would be another step in the right direction. Because for me, man, you're going to pick up good players like Slaughter and Taylor Green at skill positions, but you know me, you got to fix that offensive line. So that's really what's getting my focus.
You could also see maybe Kudus sliding inside the center. He did that a little bit last year, and obviously what didn't work out at the time, but he also just kind of suddenly, within a week just did it. So maybe that's a move that you could see. Arkansas has got, they got some players that's still got to leave this program. I've got him at 83 following KJ Jefferson announcements, which I haven't seen KJ officially enter the portal yet. Obviously, it doesn't matter. He's entering it, but he finally came out and said that. But I've got him at 83 following the latest commitments in KJ Jefferson's announcements. So if they're going to add these players still moving forward, then got to have some more movement on the current roster. Danny,
I got some work to do. Got some work to do, outgoing and incoming.
What are we expecting for the recruiting? They have 17 commitments right now, right?
Yes, sir. That's right.
Okay. So I just want to say, I said before everything started, I said Arkansas will probably sign about 20 and probably about 10 out of the transfer portal. And I feel like I'm closer to right than anybody else, including the staff.
I'll get that cookie in the mail this afternoon.
I'll take it. It's nice. It's nice to feel right about something this year, Danny.
Right.
I mean, because
I'm still holding out hope for myself. I've been wrong all year. So
me too.
Maybe I'll get one of these. But
are we expecting all 17 of these guys? Yeah.
Say again.
We expecting all 17 of these guys to sign?
Well, I don't know. There's a couple you're still worried about. A couple there, and not a couple. Jaden Ball. Let's just get right to it. Jaden Ball is a highly recruited 3-star. I've called him a 4-star on here all year, so I still would say he's a 4-star. But a lot of mixed reviews out there right now. It sounds like, to me, Arkansas side of things, they felt good about their ability to keep Jaden. The parents seem locked in with Arkansas and have for a while. But as we know, over the last month or so, you've seen Florida come in, and obviously Florida is a lot closer to home. This kid's from Columbia, Georgia, or Columbia High School in Decatur, Georgia. And then Alabama, of course, came in with a late offer. And, I was reading some of the Alabama site stuff today. They seem to think Arkansas is just out of it completely. And, I'm sitting here looking at it on the commitment list still. No word from Jaden yet. Hasn't gotten back with me. And history would tell me that's typically not good. So I'm still looking at Jaden Ball, and then, of course, Bradley Shaw on the opposite end of the spectrum there. On a positive note, looks like that's coming down to Arkansas and Clemson as well. So a 4-star linebacker. out of Hoover, Alabama. That'd be a really nice get if they're able to pull it off. He has made no indication on when a commitment might come. Of course, we know Wednesday is signing day. That doesn't necessarily mean he has to make a decision then. He's going to be playing in that All-American game on January 6th, I believe. So, if you were looking for a little momentum boost in January, I guess you could get him to wait if you got him. I would say short of 20 is what I'm looking at, unless they pick up, another junior college guy on Wednesday here or there. They could get to 20, I guess. And then, of course, Courtney Crutchfield. I know everybody's wondering about that.
Mm-hmm.
I just still think Missouri is probably the pick tomorrow at 10 a.m. for Mr. Crutchfield.
So how many you think we're expecting to sign on Wednesday?
Yeah. Well, if they all held, I would expect all of them to sign. And the next part of that is who is going to enroll early. And from what I'm hearing, everybody except Ashton Bethel-Roman would be enrolling early. So that'd be a really, really good number there. If you could get all but one of them on campus in January, that'd be sweet. So that's another positive, I suppose. But, be on the lookout for Jaden Ball. We'll see what happens there. And then, of course, Bradley Shaw over the next couple of weeks, potentially.
Okay. All right, Danny. Appreciate you.
Yeah, man.
All right, everybody. Danny West, again, follow him at Danny West 24/7, HawgSports recruiting analyst. Does a great job. You cannot keep up with Razorback recruiting without following Danny West. You just can't. It's impossible. It's impossible to do. All right, we're going to hop over to Andrew Ellis now. For those of you who don't follow Andrew, you can follow him at Andrew Ellis 24/7. He does a little bit of everything for HawgSports, basketball, football, and baseball as well. Andrew, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Trey. I'm doing good on a day that not as much is going on as I maybe had hoped. There's not a ton going on today. How are you?
I'm fine. The 14 days of the transfer portal window that has been opened, it's still open, but the dead period starts now. It's a lot. There's so much to keep up with. We got the transfer portal tracker, the scholarship distribution, the analytical depth chart, the needs, the portal guys to watch out for, and these are all things, we got to kind of keep up with. So it's been a lot, especially, when you pile Christmas on top of it and all the things that got to be done from a personal standpoint. How are you?
That's my favorite part of the early signing period, Trey, is that we get to do it right before Christmas.
Yeah. Do you have your Secret Santa gift for HawgSports picked out?
I must have missed the name drawing for that one.
Yeah. So Andrew, tell us. You've been following this basketball team, you and Curtis. What are your thoughts right now on how things are going? Obviously, they pulled off the win against Lipscomb, but it wasn't pretty.
Yeah, it's so weird because I don't know how we're even really supposed to evaluate this team because so much of what they're doing is, I don't want to say not sustainable, but just not trends that we expect to continue. LL has played one singular minute the other day, and, he played 8 minutes the game before against Oklahoma. I think it was 13 again in the game before that. It's like, is that trend going to continue? Like, we're really going to get DMP coaches' decisions from L. Ellis, a guy who, we thought was the starting point guard of this team. Mm-hmm. Caleb Battle, I think, played 12 or 13 minutes against Lipscomb Saturday. Like, that's absolutely not. He's at worst the second best player on this team. I don't expect that to continue. And so it's like, I think they're just doing so many different things with this rotation. It seems like, the front court, a different guy emerges kind of every night. And, that's some of this stuff happens in non-conference play, but I think this year it's been ramped up to a degree that I just really even in all the struggles they've had the last few years, we really haven't seen them experiment this much. We've seen some weird things happen here and there, but at this point in the year, you should at least have a firm idea of who your top 7 or 8 guys are. And I think if you ask 5 different Hawg fans, they probably all 5 have completely different opinions of who those top 7 or 8 guys are. You just reading on Twitter, you see, Leighton Blocker, Jeremiah. You see cases for literally like 12 dudes.
Yeah.
So I really think it's hard for us to even really evaluate what this team's real strengths, real weaknesses, and like what to do moving forward, because you got to figure out who your guys are and figure out what the team is. And I guess that's the most alarming part is, we've seen them have issues like, some games they can't guard the 3. Then the next game they defend it pretty well. They turn the ball over a ton. Then the next game they come out and they take care of it great. They don't pass the ball. We see them like fix these issues. But I think ultimately these issues, like, it's just going to be a different thing every day until you kind of build that firm foundation and identity with that rotation. And they're not only not at that point, they're not even as close as they were on opening night. I feel like we had a better idea of the rotation previously than we do right now. And so that's a long-winded way at Trey of saying, yeah, they did win, but there's still a lot of questions to answer. But the good news is they have just 2 games in the next, I guess it's like 12, 13 days or whatever it is. Like they've got a little bit of time to do some of that reflecting and experimenting and figuring things out. And
but didn't we think that but after the Oklahoma game? Didn't we think
Correct.
that they got a whole week here to figure this out?
Exactly, and that's why it was kind of jarring to see like the rotation basically start from scratch in the Lipscomb game. But I'll be interested to hear if we hear from Muss tomorrow. I think he'll be able to give us a little bit more measured take on some of those findings that they have after they evaluate what's going on. And so, you know how it is after the game. It's really tough to get those straight answers from Muss, especially after a performance like that. And then usually he comes back 2 days later and he has a little bit more definitive idea. And so I really look forward to hearing what he has to say. And I don't mean that like, oh, he's got to answer the tough questions. I just mean genuinely, it seems like they're still in so much of a wait and see and figuring it out process. So I think it's just going to continue to flow and evolve. And I said it before the Lipscomb game, and I'll say it now, like they just cannot enter SEC play with these same circumstances. Like you have to have a little bit more of an idea. And so, the closer we get, the more that pressure kind of ramps up. And so I'm not completely in like panic mode, like they're going to miss the tournament, but I do think that they have a lot of questions to answer and the time's running out to answer a lot of them. It's hard to feel good about the direction because it seems like they're taking some of these steps back.
Well, I think if we didn't have the knowledge of what Eric Musselman has done with teams in the past that have had their hiccups, their issues, and figuring them out, then I think it would be time for panic. I mean, if we didn't know that Musselman has that history already. By the way, I want to interject real quick because this is official now, but KJ Jefferson has officially now entered the transfer portal. He announced, obviously, the other day, but now it's official. So I just want to put that out there. But, I mean, don't you agree? Like, I feel like if we didn't know that Musselman has the reputation of getting the things fixed, I think I would be in panic mode right now.
No, 100%. And I think someone on our board actually bumped up the Hofstra thread the other day from like when Arkansas, like whatever my story was, whenever Arkansas lost to Hofstra, and the comments under it are all like, this is horrible. Muss isn't, but it's the same stuff that we're doing now. So it's kind of funny to see that. But at that point in time, we hadn't seen them do this. And so you see that more people were in that kind of panic mode. But I think ultimately for me, Trey, it comes down to like, we went into this season, all off season, saying that this team wouldn't do this. We kind of thought this might be the year that with some of these pieces that are older and had been around the block, and you had some returning pieces in Devo that had been there. So it's like, you're like, okay, this team shouldn't have to endure this weird stuff, especially because compared to a team last year that had all these freshmen and inexperience everywhere. I felt like the mental makeup and just the veteran experience of this team would be a bigger factor than it's been, frankly. And so I guess that's what makes this a little more frustrating. It's not that it's like we haven't seen them do anything they can't overcome yet. And I truly believe that, even though everyone seemed to think the Oklahoma game was a must win for whatever reason. They're obviously still, everything's still in front of them. They have an entire conference slate, but it's added to the frustration that we really didn't expect it from this group. Last year, it was a little bit more palatable when it's a bunch of freshmen. It's a little bit tougher when you have all these guards and these veterans that have been there before, and they seem to be trending the opposite direction so far.
You think he gets it figured out?
Absolutely, I do. I mean, I just, call me crazy, but I'm going to have to kind of see it before I believe it, that I'm going to have to see them truly struggle for the entirety of the season here. And especially when it comes, we see them, the first year that Musselman was here, that team probably was going to miss the tournament. But that was a completely different world in college sports that we lived in, where it really was more of a team that he just kind of had to adapt to, and he didn't have time to really do the Muss thing of building his team through the transfer portal and all that. So it's like, I'm not saying it's impossible for Eric Musselman to not make the NCAA tournament at Arkansas, but I do think until we see them truly fail with an operation that they built, I'm not going to expect them to, and I think most people would probably be crazy to do so. But, hey, I would have told you 3 weeks ago that they'd have it figured out by this point. So what do I really know?
Andrew Ellis, he knows a few things. You can follow him at Andrew Ellis 24/7. He does a little bit of everything at HawgSports. Andrew, anything else on your mind? Where do you want to take this? We kind of touched on basketball. We could talk about transfer portal or whatever you like.
I want to talk about the 2024 schedule, Trey. I'm glad you asked because –
let's do it.
I have a little bit different reaction to you than you did, I guess, because I look at it and I'm like, man, the pressure cooker is going to be on from day one.
No question.
I mean, just right out the gate. I mean, obviously, starting week 1 in Little Rock, I agree with you there, sucks. I don't know who this is for. I don't know who's a fan of this, who's like campaigning for it to be on week 1. I mean, if you have to play there, cool, but does it have to be opening game, especially when you play week 2 on the road? So it's kind of just weird where they're not going to be in Fayetteville until week 3. So I don't love that out the gate. That's such a pressure-packed game 2 against Oklahoma State. I mean, we don't really have to talk about that, but I mean, game 4 at Auburn, Arkansas can win that game, but it's like I don't think that's a game Arkansas is going to be expected to win. I don't think they're going to be expected to win the Oklahoma State game. A&M's a little bit, who knows? There's so many question marks with both of these programs. Who knows what's going on there? But I'm just talking big picture. Like, I think Arkansas is going to have to win a lot of games that I wouldn't say people are not going to expect this team to do a ton when you just look at the schedule and how it lines up. And when we get to August, regardless of what happens here in the transfer portal, I think people are going to be taken back when all the analysts at SEC Network and whatever do their schedules and they have Arkansas going 4-8, 5-7, or whatever it is. But when you just look at it on paper, like especially just from a big picture, just, like I said, there's a lot to figure out in the transfer portal. We don't know what these teams are really going to look like, but just a program perception, I think Arkansas is going to be picked to finish last by like everyone in the SEC. That was like my first reaction when I saw the schedule. I was like, man, just given the perception of how everything is, like, I think Arkansas's like win totals, like it's going to be kind of a stunning off season because it hasn't been like that in a while, honestly.
No, I 100% agree. I mean, and I look at it too, just to be clear, when I look at the way things open up, when you got, 2 games, you got, I mean, like right out of the gate that are very difficult. And the way people feel, the only reason this offseason is saved right now, Andrew, is because of Bobby Petrino hire. I mean, if Bobby Petrino wasn't hired as offensive coordinator, then people would be so sour still right now. And so they saved the offseason, I think, from a lot of toxicity. But, I mean, you got to win early with this football schedule. I don't think there's any question about it. And I think you're right. I think Arkansas will be picked last when we, wrap up SEC media days and, pick to go 4-8 or whatever. I kind of think Arkansas will either have a winning record or just completely tank because if things don't go well, then there could be a change midseason. I'm not saying I hope Sam Pittman succeeds. I hope he gets this thing turned around. And I like Sam. I think you do too. But we got to call it like we see it also. And I don't. A lot of it depends on Taylon Green, and Jacoby Criswell, that quarterback battle, but and getting the offensive line shored up. But man, you lose fans. I was talking to a buddy of mine earlier. Like when you lose fans, it is so hard to get them back. And if you lose more, then you're just going to lose more and more fans. And so that's just the nature of the beast.
Well, Trey, has anyone given you credit for the fact that I think you're the only person, at least the only person I know, and maybe I just don't know that many people, but you're the only person I know who called the fact that Bobby Petrino would be the interim head coach at Texas A&M at some point. I really do. Like, I mean, as far as like people listen to that put it out there in public, you did call that, right?
He wasn't technically the interim coach. He was. They elevated, I believe, the offensive line coach, I think, but Petrino was still running things. But I did say I think I had it missed by one game. It was my bold prediction to start the year that I think it was maybe I said I don't know if it was after the Ole Miss game. I think I said after the Ole Miss game, and I think it was again after the Mississippi State game when he got fired. But because I had him winning the next 3 games and then being the fan favorite to take over the permanent position.
The job, that's right.
Yeah, that was my bold
prediction.
Not
quite, but still, are you gonna defend your title and are you gonna pick Bobby Petrino's head coach to get fired again? Are you gonna run it back?
That would be hit with some controversy.
It does line up well to where I'm like, I can see them coming home for that LSU Tennessee stretch, or is it Tennessee LSU, and that's Bobby Petrino, interim head coach, coming home to do the job. I can see it being just an interesting offseason. Like, just looking at this schedule, I'm like, how are people are really going to like look at it and be like, expecting Arkansas to go 10-2 and be mad when it doesn't happen. But I'm like looking at that schedule and I'm like, man, that's. I mean, but that is how it is every year. I guess we shouldn't be like stunned, but I was still just kind of taken back by seeing it in writing. But I'll tell you, looking at that Texas game, I think it's like November 16th or something like that. That's going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to that because I mean, who knows what the world's going to look like then, but. I do like having just stuff like that we just don't normally see. It's kind of really it's really fun to see the schedule for the first time of what the next however many years are going to look like. It's pretty refreshing.
And this is the fun year for the schedule. You just get the better home games, and you're not the home team in Arlington. So it is a better home schedule, a more entertaining looking home schedule. But yeah, if I were to make that prediction about Petrino, that would certainly hit a lot closer to home. Predictions like that are a lot more fun when you're talking about somebody that's not right there. Right. All right, Andrew. Appreciate you, man.
All right, man. Appreciate you. Have a good one.
All right, you too. All right, everybody. Andrew Ellis, again, follow him at Andrew Ellis 24/7. Does a little bit of everything for us at HawgSports. We'll look over some questions here. I don't think I have anything else to do that I really wanted to hit on. I think we pretty much covered all of it, but I do want to mention one more time our friends over at Ozarks Go, and I also want to tell you, by the way, HawgSports is 50% off if you want to go follow all the portal madness. But our friends over at Ozarks Go, I mentioned them earlier. They offer several different tiers of internet service. You can get Gigabit service, which is 1,000 megabits per second, which is what I have, which I think is probably great for most families. If you're like me and obviously you work online and you use a lot of internet, then I use the Multigig, which is 2,500 megabits per second. They offer other tiers of internet service as well. They don't jack your rate up from year 1 to year 2. When you call them at 479-684-4900 to see if they're available in your area, which is generally Northwest Arkansas, parts of Oklahoma, Missouri, ever expanding, you're going to talk to somebody who knows the area. So when you say, hey, are you available north of the tunnel, they're going to know what the tunnel is because they're from here. They're going to know the landscape of Northwest Arkansas, Bentonville, Rogers, Springdale, Fayetteville, Siloam, all these other areas around here in the 550,000 people population. They're going to know all that. So go reach out to them, ozarksgo.net/hawg, HAWG, or you can call them at 479-684-4900. Terrific internet service that I've been very pleased with the last 2.5 years that I've had them. I was a customer before they ever reached out to me. Questions? Let's see what we got here. YouTube tends to be a lot more comments. Dwayne Alt says, hey, Trey, are we going to be losing any more coaches for the Hogs, or are they all staying? I feel like they're going to hold strong where they are right now. So this could be the least amount of turnover that Pittman has had in his time at Arkansas in a single year. However, we are reaching, there's the possibility for dominoes to fall. I mean, we hit spring in 2021 when Brad Davis left, right? But you have the coaching convention coming up in January. There's always a lot of changes that happen then as guys are talking and interviewing and such, and sometimes you have some dominoes fall. But right now I kind of feel like the Cody Kennedy to Eric Mateos move is going to be the only one. Michael Kepsley says 18 players gone, only 6 coming in. That's a 3-to-1 ratio. Not good. Still not one big time get out of the portal. Not one. So, Michael, I would say on this, your panic is kind of mirrors the panic last year when we, saw a lot of people freaking out. And it's exiting time in a lot of ways with the portal. You do have players coming in, but you say 18 players are gone, but it's not 18 players. It's, I think, 13, something like that. Losing a walk-on, which they've lost, 4 walk-ons, 5 walk-ons. I wouldn't consider that like, oh, my God, we got players leaving. You lost some walk-ons. You've lost some good players too. You've also lost some players that weren't that good. You got a lot of players that get processed during this time. It's just how it is. Only 6 coming in. That's a 3-1 ratio. So, again, like last year they had 24 players leave. Most of those players left pretty early, and then you had 18 players come in. They definitely improved their roster. The record doesn't show it, but the roster overall was improved. I mean, you had 10 players on defense that made a major impact out of the transfer portal, and you processed some guys that just weren't going to play here and ended up in a lot worse situation. So I would keep that in mind. I don't know if right now is the time to freak out with the transfer portal. So not yet. And they're still in on some big-time guys. We'll see how it shakes out. But, there's a time to panic. I'll let you know. I don't think it's right now. Kiffin's killing it. Pittman is recruiting like he's going to be around until 2030. Wake up, Arkansas. Same guy. Yeah, Kiffin is doing well in the portal. No question. I mean, they've done well. And they did well last year, and they did well the year before. He's kind of been a little bit ahead of the game. I don't think there's any question about that. They did well in the transfer portal year before last, and, Arkansas killed them in Fayetteville, and last year they lost a close game. But, yeah, they're doing a good job over there right now. Jim Mears says, it kills me we're taking 2-2, 3-3. We should be talking 4-0 and 6-0, maybe 3-1, 5-1. More, Jim, I'm not just talking like that. And I preface that by saying, this shouldn't be the expectation of Hog fans or, what Hog fans want. I'm just saying, like, for Sam Pittman, he needs to be 4-2 at least coming out of that, in my opinion. 3-3, I wouldn't say like he has to be, he can't be 3-3. I'm not saying that because he can. I'm just saying like you're going to get a lot of negativity. 4-2, I think you're going to skirt some of that and say, okay, maybe things have righted and straightened out. But, they're coming off of a 4-8 season. So I'm not saying like this is going to be like great. They're 4-2, like throw a parade for him. I'm just saying like kind of where he needs to be to get the momentum right coming out of the gate. Honcho Razorback says Petrino will probably be the coach by mid-season. There's going to be a lot of that talk. I don't think that's healthy talk for Arkansas right now. Like so many people saying that kind of stuff, I don't think that's in the best interest of Arkansas right now, But that's natural for people to come out with that right out of the gate. All right. The sky is falling for Michael Kopesky. There's no question. Mediocre crap, bench Devo. I mean, he's filling it up. That's Arkansas sports for you. Hit the fan portal. I don't like it. Hit the fan portal. All right. Yeah, next year's schedule ought to be fun. Everyone should be thrilled about 1-7 in the conference, says Bob M. Okay, just a lot of comments, not a lot of questions, I guess. I feel like we answered all the questions. Man, so much negativity, and I understand it. I mean, basketball team has struggled a little bit. Well, I think they'll get things straightened out. Man, such negative. Some of the things you're saying about players on here, YouTube. Goodness gracious. All right. I think we probably covered everything we need to cover. Yeah. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the portal talk we had today, even though everybody's in a bit of a little negative, pissy state, and I get it. I understand. Nobody likes losing. I don't like losing. I do think it's a little early for panic mode with the transfer portal right now. Let's see what happens with some of these guys that they brought in and some of the guys that they're planning on recruiting still. There's still a long time to go for the portal. And you have to remember also, like, just because the transfer portal ends, when does it end? Is it January 14th or 15th? Just because it ends, that just means players can't go into the portal at that time. It doesn't mean that players can't say, I'm going to be going into the portal. It's still basically open in that regard, with players announcing their intention to do that. And players can come out of the portal at any time. So there'll still be a lot of activity going on even when the transfer window closes. But I get it right now. Everybody's a little upset. Some things didn't go the way that we thought they might needed to go. Basketball team isn't performing up to the expectation, and football team's still 4-8, right? So, all right. Well, I want to thank Danny for providing all the input, and thank Andrew Ellis for his takes that are always entertaining as well. All right, everybody, we're going to hop off now. I guess we're obviously not going to do a show on Christmas Day, so it'll probably be a little bit before I'm back with you, unless there's reason for an emergency show, which happens from time to time. All right, everybody, thanks for joining me. This has been Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, and we'll catch you next time.